Managing people is the crux of management, getting the best out of people, helping them achieve their own individual objectives, and then coming together to achieve what's been set out by the business. It's an incredibly rewarding responsibility, but also can be quite challenging.
It's about enabling the existing management team within that business to lead, motivate, develop their people so they can be successful in terms of achieving their business plans and goals.
So the challenging aspects of managing people are, I think, identifying what it is that motivates them to do a good job. And certainly in the past I've made the mistake of assuming that people are motivated by the same factors that I am. I enjoy the recognition of a job well done, but other people might be motivated by money, they might be keen to get promoted, or they simply might just want to turn up and do a good job in the hours that they are allotted. And identifying what it is that fundamentally makes people do a good job is at the heart of management.
I think if we can understand people as people and get people focused using their skills and talents to achieve the goals, and it's making sure that the goals that we are trying to achieve are always clear, because often they may not be clear, then I find that's one of my strengths, probably building that rapport really quickly with people by questioning them, finding out about their job, their roles, what's going well at the minute, what they think actually is frustrating them at the moment, and listening to those frustrations and concerns, and then trying to work with them to find solutions, how we can actually move things forward. I do tend to find that's one of the key strengths, to get people on side, and then we can achieve whatever needs to be achieved.
If I was looking back over my career and advising my younger self, I think I'd want myself to be far more reflective about the impacts of my management style on other people, and also to recognise that everybody is different and does require a different approach to management. I think probably when I was much younger, I was far more simplistic in my approach to management and just looking at the surface of what was happening rather than digging a little bit deeper into perhaps what was happening behind the scenes. The actual application of the theories that I've learnt over my MBA has been really interesting, actually. We've gone through a large period of change at the Wine Society, which is still ongoing, and so there are numerous change frameworks which I've been able to apply. I needed to form a guiding coalition of people across the business who would be able to implement a particular change within the buying team. There was some resistance from some members of senior management, and so I was unable to progress things initially. But by getting other key people on side, I was able to form enough momentum to get the change initiative moving.
So in terms of company values, I'm a firm believer that every organisation needs to have company values. It's almost like the glue that sticks all the people within that business together in terms of how you behave, both internally and externally. And in fact, with my business, I actually wrote the values before I actually wrote down what the company was even going to be achieving and what the mission and purpose of the company actually was. It was more important to me to build something that tied in with probably my personal values, but I knew were going to be commercially attractive so that clients would want to work with us. It all starts with the value number one, understanding the client's needs, understanding what the client wants to achieve, what's going well at the moment, and what they need to improve on going into the future. Then it's about being tailor-made in terms of the proposals and solutions. Then it's about being inspirational. Inspirational, really important value. I or my team, we can't make people change a process or a behaviour. We can inspire them in terms of the benefits they're going to get if they do so.
So certainly over the last few years, we've seen significant change as a business, and that can be challenging to manage. There's a great deal of uncertainty and sometimes fear amongst members of the team who are unsure what the company objectives are. Whilst the senior management might be very clear on what the outcomes are, sometimes information doesn't cascade as quickly as would be desired, leaving people to fill in the space with their own assumptions, which can be incorrect. And it's an important role of the manager to help people through this particular period of time. Obviously, as a manager, you are expected to portray the company values and the company position, but the way that's communicated is down to you and your own individual values and your knowledge of the members of your particular team.
It's really interesting to look at what changes may have occurred within the management consultancy sector. Change tends to happen quite often incrementally. So it's quite hard to reflect in terms of how things have changed. I'm sure things have changed over the years, but it's quite hard to reflect on that as they probably change day by day by day. I guess the responsiveness that clients are requesting and requiring in terms of if they're running a dynamic business and their customers and their clients are being demanding, then that clearly gets passed all the way through the supply chain in terms of needs, requirements, how we need to chop and change and be quite dynamic around our project planning, around delivery, timetables, and so on. So in terms of the journey that took me to where I am now, I actually left school at 16. Having done O-levels, as it was back in 1982, I was really excited to get out into the big wide world. And I think the phrase I used at the time was I wanted to understand and explore the university of life rather than a structured university. One of my milestones came when I was fortunate to be sent on a training course at quite an early part of my career when I was still doing clerical work in financial services in a big head office, when it was all about goal setting, getting you to really think about what your strengths were, what you wanted to do. And I do recall writing down my first list of goals was I wanted to have a role where I could talk and be noisy, and then had the confidence in 2006 to start Us to You Consulting. And the reason it's called Us to You Consulting is it's about we go out to each business, understand their needs, and work with them to achieve a positive difference.
So over the course of my career, I've worked in a number of different management roles. I first started out in branch management as a graduate trainee for a wine retailer on the high street. And that was fascinating because it meant that I could learn a lot about direct people management within small teams. And over the years, I progressed into area sales management and ended up working as head of sales for that particular company. Since then, I've also worked as a consultant, so working for myself as a part of other businesses, advising them on their wine ranges. And for the last 8.5 years, I've worked here at the Wine Society. I think one's identity as a manager is a very interesting question, and it's something that I've certainly reflected on over my career. And probably it's only really recently that I've really come to any sort of conclusions as to what sort of manager I want to be. And I think their competence is really at the centre of that. I want to be viewed as being good as a manager, and by that I mean that I look after my team and I work well with my team. But I also want to have a level of technical competence in whatever job I'm actually supposed to be doing as well. So that, for me, means wine. So it's important to me that I can hold my own when talking to the buyers in that technical context. And I think that gives me a big advantage in those specialist circles.
And I think it's quite helpful, quite often when we do leadership development, that we will use different tools and techniques so people can understand, is this a behaviour, the caring side, is it something they're going to do naturally, or is it something they're going to have to work on a bit more? And as indeed a shaper, more of a red, impatient person myself, I know the caring side is something that I have to work on indeed as well, because I can be extremely task-focused and deadline-driven, but we know actually, as leaders, we only get the results that we're looking for if we take the people with us, and part of that is the caring nature. There's so many different aspects of diversity that we need to take into account if we're going to have happy, successful, productive relationships. So it's really about suspending that judgment about people, not saying the wrong thing at the wrong time that could be actually offensive without meaning to cause offense, but actually getting to know that person as a person. And only when you understand their individual talents, needs, skills, sensitivities and so on, can we then actually adapt our own style to make sure that we are then really demonstrating diversity and inclusion.
So at the Wine Society, and certainly over the course of my time here, we've seen significant change in the way that the membership is made up, and also change in the types of employees that are coming to work for us. Traditionally, our customers were male and middle-aged to older, But that's changing now, and younger people are discovering the joy of good wine, and we're seeing more women joining us as members as well. Alongside that, it's important that our employees change to be able to best serve this changing membership. So we are seeing lots more younger people joining us from backgrounds that perhaps were not traditional within the wine trade, and certainly more women within the wine society occupying senior management roles. In terms of ethnic diversity, the wine trade, I think, does sadly lag behind other industries. There is change happening at the moment, and we at the Wine Society are very proud to be part of some of the initiatives across the industry, whereby we are operating a mentorship scheme and also offering free training to people of BAME backgrounds to join the wine trade. But I have to say we are at a very early stage at the moment, and there's a lot more work that we need to be doing.
But actually recognising everybody is a specific, unique individual, different talents, needs, skills, backgrounds, whether it's a protected characteristic as per the Equality Act 2010 in the UK, or whether it's something to do with another diversity aspect in terms of class, for example, social economic background. So in terms of helping clients understand how they can manage the performance of their people, we've got a nice circular flow map where we talk about plan, manage and review. So taking the planning part first, it's making sure that the organisation we're working with has got a clear business plan, marketing plan, clear tactical plans coming off the back of that. What are they going to do over each quarter? And then distilling that down to each individual department and therefore ultimately down to each individual person, making sure everybody has the classic SMART objectives: specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and timed, making sure they go through that whole process, and that's part of the planning phase. Once that bit's been completed, making sure people have got the right skills to go through the managing phase. So what are they going to do to communicate, to train, to coach, develop, motivate their people so they can deliver? And then the reviewing part of that model, what are they going to do to be formally and informally getting the feedback, having the conversations, reviewing with each person what's going well, what's not going so well, what can they do differently and better, and then linking it back to the top of the model, back to the planning phase. What have we learnt? Where are we going to go for the next planning cycle?
Over the last year, we've fundamentally changed our approach to reviewing performance within the business. Historically, we'd always used a formal performance development review, PDR, annual appraisal, which was a formal sit-down with the line manager to talk through the year's performance and to set goals for the next year. But this was quite challenging for both parties, I would say, particularly working in small teams. And it led to managers perhaps not rating people fairly, and also to just be thinking about recent events when appraising and reviewing the performance. More recently, we've moved to a more informal style where the manager will sit down and have short, meaningful 5-minute conversations on a regular basis with members of the team to try and, I suppose, change ways and change approaches before they become too big of an issue. Working with a team remotely, it's incredibly difficult to see how hard people are actually working. Some people are working far too hard, perhaps, and it's quite hard to tell them to step away and have a break. Sometimes when they're working in the same room that they are living in. Conversely, it's also quite hard sometimes to see whether people are putting in the hours and the effort that one would expect them to do. And whilst we can manage on outputs rather than inputs, which I think is incredibly important when working remotely, so assessing the work that people actually produce rather than the hours that they do, it is difficult to have those one-to-one challenging conversations over Teams. And it's something that I think we all need a little bit more practice on. When our CEO took the strong position of closing the business to allow us to reconfigure ourselves during COVID-19, this was communicated to the business through a series of online Zoom and Teams meetings. So he was very prepared to stand up virtually and talk to all members of the organisation and invite questions from everybody in the team. And everybody could see face to face that he was caring for their well-being.
So during the pandemic, it's been important to maintain a strong team. And I think we've been fortunate in as much as most of the team are used to the working from home model anyway. I think there's been opportunity to make sure we're having team meetings and briefings and so on in terms of using Teams and Zoom and the usual kind of online technologies to make sure we stay in touch. But equally, we've used a lot of phone calls and just checking in on people to make sure we're taking time to listen to their story. Everyone's had their own story in terms of how it's affected them, their family, etc. during the pandemic.
Moving to remote working over the last 18 months has been a significant challenge for everybody in the business, and certainly for me with my team. The people I work with tend to be situated across the business in different departments and so operate within their own distinct silos and subcultures. So working with them remotely meant, first of all, being able to track them down remotely to bring them all together for meetings virtually. For me, specifically, the main challenges of working at a distance have been actually trying to get the right people available at the right times and to get my particular projects on the agenda. In my current role, a lot of what I'm trying to do is largely around strategy and developing our approach over the next 5 years. But over the course of the COVID-19 outbreak, inevitably, a lot of the focus has been on operations and ensuring we continue to service our members and supply the wine that they're looking for. So really, the challenge has been about getting my particular initiatives front and centre of people who I can't see on a daily basis and who I can't just pop into their office to have a chat to.
I suppose in a way there was a bit of a benefit maybe, in as much as rather than people from overseas travelling to a point in the UK where we'd all convene, the fact that we were then able to get people from Holland and from Spain and Portugal, whatever, just to kind of click on to be able to participate in workshops. In a way, that kind of worked. But actually, it was quite advantageous to be able to run workshops and learn how to use that technology for breakout rooms and so on. And clearly, I think some of that will still be here to stay as an option.